Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Essays on the Gita. We are on page 74 on my copy, Sankhya and Yoga, with, as always, our beloved Ranga. So we had read this paragraph previously, and we'll go through it now. Do you want to do a little bit from previous? Or
we can just
little bit.
situate the situation, what the problem is. The Gita has accepted Sankhya, many principles in Sankhya, and yet differs from it. So that's the discussion that we are having now. What is accepted by the Gita in Sankhya and what it is not accepting? And what is the difference between Vedanta and Sankhya? That's the discussion going on. Okay. So last time we put up a chart of the Sankhya which shows you all the 24 principles. So that was this chart roughly. So I got it typed out and we put it on the net, right in front and at the back. So that was the thing. So this is what he is discussing. Okay. The 24 tattvas, the principles. So with this, we'll read what he's saying. Okay, so 13 are the principles we have read. Okay, so now there are certainly plenty of things. Okay? I'll read each sentence because we have already read it once. There are certainly plenty of things in our existence which the Sankhya does not explain at all or does not explain satisfactorily. But if all we need is a rational explanation of the cosmic processes in their principles as a basis for the great object common to the ancient philosophies, the liberation of the soul from the obsession of cosmic nature, then the Sankhya explanation of the world and the Sankhya way of liberation seem as good as and as effective as any other. What we do not see at first is why it should bring in an element of pluralism into its dualism by affirming one Prakriti but many Purushas. We have to discuss this. So, Vedanta says that all the human souls which are there separate, seemingly separate, each one has got a separate soul, but they are all essentially one with the Supreme Soul. You can go and merge into that. That is liberation. The ultimate aim of liberation is to merge into that. Most of the philosophies in India at least agree with that. But Sankhya is saying that all the souls are different. They are not the same. So pluralism of souls.
But Sri Aurobindo does agree with that.
He agrees with it at the lower level.
At the lower level.
He doesn't agree with it at the higher level. He is a Vedantic. Essentially, if you are not essentially, your soul is not essentially divine, how can you merge with it? How can there be an identification? There can't be. You can have a relation, but you can't have a union with the divine. But you can experience a union. So therefore, ultimately, essentially, the human soul is the same as the divine soul. This difference of essential and practical, we have to understand. Okay, it's like essentially all the mangoes on one tree are essentially the same, but each one is different. So it's like that. The essentiality is the same. The divine element in you is the divine element above. So,
could you explain a little bit to us about this first line? Does not explain at all or does not explain satisfactorily?
Yeah, does not explain at all. For instance, the problem of rebirth. the problem of karma. Those things are not, as far as I know, they are not dealt with in that detail and such. So it is concentrating mainly on liberation. The individual soul has to liberate himself from Prakriti, and there Sankhya is fine. That's right. But what is difficult to understand, he's saying, is why does it bring in the element of pluralism? Whereas the Vedanta is saying it is not. And how does. So now the argument will be for Sankhya. Why Sankhya is saying that each individual soul is different. There are pluralism of human souls. Okay, so that's what he's saying. The argument goes like this. What we do not see is at first, okay, is why it should bring in an element of pluralism into its dualism by affirming one Prakriti but many Purushas. Prakriti is nature. Nature is one, obviously. It is the same for everybody. You are in nature, I am in nature, it is one. But each soul is having a different relation with the Prakriti. One Prakriti, many souls. Why? So he is explaining why. It would seem that the existence of one Purusha and one Prakriti should be sufficient to account for the creation and process of the universe. At the highest level, one Purusha and one Prakriti should be enough. Chit Shakti. Satchidananda, Chit Shakti. That should be enough. Okay? But he's saying, but to account for the creation and process of the universe. But the Sankhyas was bound to evolve pluralism by its rigidly analytical observation of the principle of things. First, actually, this is the argument of Sankhya. First, actually, we find that there are many conscious beings in the world. You are conscious, I am conscious, but we are totally separate. Okay? And we find that there are many conscious beings in the world, and each regards the same world in his own way and has his independent experience of its subjective and objective things, his separate dealings with the same perceptive and reactive processes. So, you are experiencing the world in one way, I am experiencing the world in another way. You may like certain fruits, I don't like same fruits I don't like. You may see her in one way, I may see her in another way. So there is a totally different. So this is the first thing. Secondly, he is saying perceptive and reactive, we have already discussed this once before. Each one is seeing things perceptively and reactively in different ways. You are interacting with the physical world through your senses. That's the perceptive. The universe is giving you visual data, auditory data, or olfactory data, okay, gustatory data, tactile data. Tactile? Is that the word?
Yes, tactile is correct.
So, and you are receiving. So this is the perceptive. The universe is interacting with you. You are interacting with the universe in a different way. Each one is interacting differently. Your reaction to things is different. And that's the reactive process. So in the Sanskrit we have the words Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. Jnanendriya, the senses that give you knowledge of the physical world. And you are acting with the universe through your organs of action. And the organs of action are hands, legs, the two organs at the lower end of the body, and your mouth, your tongue, your speech. Because you can have an effect in the world with your speech. You can hurt someone, you can console someone, so you are having an effect in the physical world. So this is, each one is doing it differently. Okay? So now, if there were only one Purusha, like the Vedanta is saying, there would not be this central independence and separateness, but all would see the world in an identical fashion and with a common subjectivity and objectivity. If your soul and my soul are the same, our experience of the universe will be the same.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not. Therefore, there has to be necessarily different souls. That's the argument of the Sankhya philosophy. So it has to end up with pluralism of souls. which Vedanta does not agree. So how does Vedanta explain this? It says it's all illusion. All your reasoning and all these things have no importance at all. It's all illusion. And even if it is not illusion, it's a very secondary importance. It's a fact it may be a fact, temporary fact in time and space. But why do you want to waste your time with temporary things? Why don't you go to that which is essential and permanent? That's a Vedanta. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so if there are only one Purusha, there would not be this central independence and separativeness, but all would see the world in an identical fashion and with a common subjectivity and objectivity. Because Prakriti is one, all witness the same world. Because her principles are everywhere the same, the general principles which constitute internal and external experience are the same for all. But the infinite difference of view and outlook and attitude and action and experience and escape from experience. When you are escaping from the physical world, I am not. I am still a slave to nature. So how can it be if there is only one Purusha? Your soul is experiencing liberation, I am not. So there has to be pluralism at this level. Okay, so that's what he's saying. And escape from. Now look at the difference. View, outlook, attitude, action, experience, and escape from it. All are different. So Sankhya is absolutely right. A difference not of the natural operations which are the same, but of the witnessing consciousness. Your eyes and my eyes are essentially the same, but the consciousness that is differing. Okay, so are utterly inexplicable except on the supposition that there is a multiplicity of witnesses, many Purushas. So in the physical world, you have to assume that there are many Purushas. Okay? But still Sankhya is a minor philosophy and Vedanta is the most dominant philosophy. So how does it explain this? I told you just now, it's all illusion. It has no basic importance. That is the important thing, the permanent. And we will judge everything from that level. That's a Vedanta. Okay, so the separative ego sense, we may say, is a sufficient explanation. Okay, so we can say that the separative ego sense, we may say, is a sufficient explanation. But the ego sense is a common principle of nature and need not vary. That's a counter argument. You could say, why is it necessary for different? We are experiencing not through the soul, but through the ego. And the ego is one for everybody. That would be the argument against Sankhya. But Sankhya is again saying that for by itself, it simply induces the Purusha to identify himself with Prakriti. Okay, so this is but the ego sense is a common principle of nature and need not vary. For by it, let's read it. It is Vedantic philosophy. For by itself, it simply induces Purusha to identify himself with Prakriti. And if there is only one Purusha, all beings would be one, joined and alike in their egoistic consciousness. However different in detail might be the mere forms and combinations of these natural parts. The natural parts, body, mind, life. There would be no difference of soul outlook and soul experience. The variations of nature ought not to make all this central difference. I think we'll have to look a little more carefully into this. So, one thing is clear. Sankhya is saying very clearly that there are many souls. Okay? But you can argue that the separative ego sense, we may say, that's a counter argument to Sankhya. The separative ego sense, we may say, is sufficient explanation. You are experiencing the physical world from the ego sense. Okay? The argument again will be, but the ego sense is a common principle in nature. The Sankhya will reply that way. The egos are not different. It is the same for everybody. The sense of separation. Ahankara. Then to understand this, you have to go back to the chart. Okay? You have to see that the Ahankara is very high up. The 24 principles of Prakriti, the subjective aspect, Buddhi, Ahankara, Manas and Chitta. These are common to the Prakriti. So that's the argument. So depends on how you look at it. So it goes like this. But the ego sense is a common principle of nature and need not vary. For by itself, it simply induces the Purusha to identify himself with Prakriti. And if there's only one Purusha, all beings would be one, joined and alike in their egoistic consciousness. So, again, Sankhya is saying that if only one Purusha is there, everybody would react in the same way.
But question is, Purusha identifying itself with Prakriti.
Yes.
But we are told from Sri Aurobindo that is not the case. It reflects in the Purusha.
It reflects, yeah, that's right. But the reflection is a sort of, you can say, semi-identification.
Okay.
Just like the cinema images falling on the screen. You are not seeing the screen anymore, you are seeing only the images. You are identifying the screen and the images. So you can say that it's a reflection and yet it's an identification. So, yeah, however different in detail might be the mere forms and combinations of the natural parts, there would be no difference of soul outlook and soul experience. The variations of nature ought not to make all the central difference. This multiplicity of outlook and from the beginning to end, separateness of experience in one witness, one Purusha. Therefore, the pluralism of souls is a logical necessity to the pure Sankhya system, divorced from the Vedantic elements of the ancient knowledge which gave it birth. So very clearly, Sankhya is establishing the fact that practically there are different souls. There is a multiplicity of souls. Nature is one, multiplicity of souls. Okay? So, therefore, pluralism of souls is a logical necessity to a pure Sankhya system divorced from the Vedantic elements of the ancient knowledge which gave it birth. What are the Vedantic elements? Oneness. Okay. Oneness, everything is one, basically. But the Sankhya is a dualistic. There is Purusha and there is Prakriti. There is consciousness and there is force. They are together, but they are separate. In the physical world, we are very clearly separate. Your body, mind, life is separate from the soul. Okay, so this is what he's saying. The cosmos and its process can be explained by the commerce of one Prakriti with one Purusha, but not the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos. This is the subjection, the objection to Sankhya. The cosmos and its processes can be explained by the commerce of one Prakriti with one Purusha. This is the Vedantic view, but not the multiplicity of conscious beings in the. So this is the first difficulty in accepting Sankhya in the Gita. So the Gita will not accept this plurality. It will accept only the Vedantic way. Okay? But it is accepting basically the problem of the Purusha and Prakriti is accepting, and it's also accepting the 24 principles, and it's also accepting the gunas of nature. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas.
Gunas, yeah.
This much it accepts. Okay? So this is one difficulty which the Gita is not accepting. There is one difference between, because Gita is a Vedantic work. It is Vedantic. And the Sankhya is a dualistic. It is different from Vedanta. So, now we are saying there is another difficulty with the Vedanta and the Sankhya. There is another difficulty quite as formidable. Liberation is the object set before itself by this philosophy, as by others. This liberation is effected, we have said, by the Purusha's withdrawal of his consent from the activities of Prakriti, which he conducts only for his pleasure. So long as the soul is identified with the body, mind, life, it is in slavery. It is a slave to body, mind, life, slave to nature. Purusha is subject to nature. But the Purusha's withdrawal of his consent from the activities of Prakriti. When the Purusha stands back and separates itself from Prakriti, I am not the body, I am not the vital, I am not the mind, then it separates and can get liberation. So it is a Purusha which is separating itself from the Prakriti. But it is really so, because we have said on the one hand that Purusha is inactive.
Yes.
So if it is inactive, how is it separating itself? So that's the question being discussed now. Okay, so I'm explaining. The Purusha's withdrawal of his consent from the activities of Prakriti, which he conducts only for his pleasure. But in sum, this is only a way of speaking. The Purusha is passive, and the act of giving or withdrawing consent cannot really belong to it, because it is inactive. It doesn't do anything at all. It neither sanctions nor withdraws. It's a way of speaking. So who does that? He'll tell you it's part of nature. The Purusha is passive, and the act of giving or withdrawing consent cannot really belong to it.
But in Savitri, he tells us that the Buddha that the Purusha sanctions all of Prakriti's work.
Yeah, that is acceptable in Vedanta, but in Sankhya it is inactive.
Okay.
In fact, this question also dealt with the karma, theory of karma. Is it really that we have no freedom at all? The body, mind, life does not have a freedom, that is sure, because there are strict laws in the physical world. But the soul can become free. The moment it becomes free, it has a say. So it is not inactive. That's a Vedanta theory. These are all theories, various theories.
Yes.
Okay, so the Purusha is passive, and that we have read. So cannot really. So the Purusha is passive, and the act of giving or withdrawing consent cannot really belong to it, but must be a movement in Prakriti itself. In the Sankhya, it must be the Prakriti itself. That means the mental Purusha is separating itself, not the soul. Okay, so if we consider, we shall see that it is, so far as it's an operation, a movement of reversal or recoil in the principle of buddhi, the mind, the discriminative will. Buddhi has been lending itself to the perceptions of the mind sense. Okay? The mind sense is the manas. Okay? It has been busy discriminating and coordinating the operations of the cosmic energy, and by the aid of the ego sense, identifying the witness with her works of thought, sense, and action. At our level also, we are thinking that we are the body, mind, life. We are not conscious of the soul. It's really the soul identifying itself with the body, mind, life. So we are not aware of the soul. We are thinking that this is me. So the mind is the one that separates itself. That's the argument. Okay. Buddhi has been lending itself to the perception of the mind sense. It has been busy discriminating and coordinating the operations of the cosmic energy, and by the aid of the ego sense, identifying the witness, the soul, with her works of thought, sense, and action. Thought, mind, sense, vital, action, physical. Okay? Body, mind, life. It arrives by the process of discriminating things at the acid and dissolvent realization that this identity is a delusion. The mental Purusha realizes that I am mistaken It is not body-mind life at all. I am not the body-mind life. So, acid and dissolvent realization. What dissolves? The identification dissolves. Very interesting word. Acid
Yes.
and dissolvent.
Yes.
When you put something into acid, it dissolves. Even iron will dissolve in nitric acid. So, the identification is dissolved. Okay, so acid and dissolvent realization of this identity is a delusion. It discriminates finally the Purusha from Prakriti and perceives that all is merely disturbance of the equilibrium of the gunas. The gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. Okay, remember. The buddhi, at once intelligence and will, recoils from the falsehood which it has been supporting, and the Purusha, ceasing to be bound, no longer associates himself with the interest of the mind in the cosmic play. So the soul gets liberated. It's not interested anymore in the mind taking interest in the cosmic play. Are we not with our mind thinking that I should do this, I should do that? So we are identifying ourselves with our daily activities. So that's what he's pointing out. And once this separation occurs, the soul is not interested anymore in the body-mind life. The ultimate result will be that Prakriti will lose her power to reflect herself in the Purusha. The reflection, the identification, reflection and identification disappears and the soul is free. That is liberation. So, Sankhya is interested only in liberation, as are the traditional yogas in the Indian system. Liberate yourself. Enough. That's enough. For Srimdo, it is not enough. Prakriti will lose her power to reflect herself in the Purusha. For the effect of the ego sense is destroyed, and the intelligent will, becoming indifferent, ceases to be the means of her sanction. So if the ego has gone, that question of the sanction doesn't arise anymore. That's what he's saying. Necessarily then, her gunas must fall into a state of equilibrium. Sattva, rajas, tamas are all distributed absolutely at peace and calm. Okay, for the soul. The cosmic play must cease, the Purusha return to his immobile repose. But if there were only one Purusha and this recoil of the discriminating principle from his delusions took place, all cosmos would cease. But it is not. So that's one difficulty with the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya says, that's why it is necessary that all are different. You are liberated, I am not. So how can there be one Purusha? Okay. I told you, how does the Vedanta deal with this question? It's all an illusion. Okay, that's what he's saying. So, what he says, as it is, we see that nothing of the kind happens. A few beings among innumerable millions attain to liberation or move towards it. The rest are in no way affected, nor is cosmic nature in a play with them one whit inconvenienced by this summary rejection, which should be the end of all her processes. So, if the liberated man rejects the physical world, it makes no difference to the nature. It continues to exist. That's what we saw that in Life Divine also the other day. Very interesting. So, summary rejection. Only by the theory of many independent Purushas can this fact be explained. Okay? The monism is that of Mayavada. Okay? The monism is that of Mayavada. In other words, the only
at all logical.
Only the theory of many independent Purushas can this fact be explained. The only at all logical explanation from the point of view of Vedantic monism is that of the Mayavada. It's an illusion. So, Sankhya may be right at the physical level, but it's an illusion. Escape from the illusion and get liberation. That's the difference between Sankhya and Vedanta. But there the whole thing becomes a dream. In Vedanta, all this difference and display, all is a dream. It's not a reality. Okay? So, Mayavada becomes a dream. Both bondage and liberation are circumstances of the unreality, the empirical blunderings of Maya. Empirical, the practical experiences, blunderings of Maya. In reality, there is none freed, none bound.
Whoa.
That's the Vedantic solution. Okay? The more realistic Sankhya view of things does not admit this phantasmagoric idea of existence and therefore cannot adopt this resolution. Okay? Sankhya does not accept that.
The more realistic view of Sankhya.
Yeah. The more realistic in the physical world. In the physical world is more real. Okay. So in the more realistic Sankhya view of things does not admit this phantasmagoric idea of existence and therefore cannot adopt this solution. This is a very interesting whole thing because if the Buddhists, Mayavada and Buddhists are the same, no, they have the world is unreal. So, if the world is unreal, the Vedanta will argue, you are talking of liberation. So who is getting liberated? From what? It's all an illusion. So is there is no one who is getting liberated and there is no bondage. It's all an illusion.
How is there any liberation?
Exactly. So that's it. So the Buddhist will answer that your argument is also part of the illusion. You please have the experience and you will see that what we are saying is the reality. It's a different way of looking at things. Each one is valid in his own way. The problem is language.
I love when Sri Aurobindo says that he had been searching more deeply than any scientist.
Yes, absolutely.
For this answer.
Yeah. Absolutely. He says tested, retested. We know that in the record of yoga, he goes on saying that when he discovers that he has a certain power, he goes on applying that to different cases and going on seeing. He started with very simple things. He found that he has a power over things. So he started experimenting. First with animals. He saw a bird sitting somewhere. He said, let me will that bird to go and sit on that tree and not on the parapet of the terrace. And he is watching. In the beginning, the power is not enough. So the bird ultimately goes there, but before going there, it goes somewhere else. But later on, the power increased and he could direct the bird directly into the tree where he wanted. He is seeing a man walking in the road. Okay, and he comes to the crossroads. Now he wills him to turn right. The man may have different ideas, but still he is willing that he should turn right, and he watches. So this is the type of testing he was doing. Again and again, like science, experimenting, verification. Repeat the experiment and make sure that what your conclusion you are coming to is real. That's why he says that. I have been doing research more thoroughly and more deeply than any scientist. He's going on experimenting. Can I cure somebody's? Can I cure their disease? And he's seeing that yes, he can do it. So testing again and again, again and again. Since you have raised the question, I will tell you one case where he did not succeed, and I'll tell you why he did not succeed. There was the mother is a collection of articles, letters, which he wrote to someone. Okay? And that man, I forget his name now. His wife was Champa Ben, and she used to live with us. Poonam Chand, I think his name was. Okay, he was a Gujarati man, and these letters were written to him. They were all compiled into one book, The Mother, afterwards. Oh. Particularly about the money, it was written to him. And he had a problem with his leg. Okay? So Sri Aurobindo says, give me accurately the symptoms and I will see that you will get cured. Okay? But he went to Madras and the doctors were not giving him the correct information, so the actual symptoms did not come to Sri Aurobindo. And if the actual symptoms don't come to him, how is he going to act on it? Okay? So this also needs a little explanation, I'll tell you. So finally what happened was that they did not, Sri Aurobindo could not instruct him because he was not getting the right information about the symptoms. So his leg had to be amputated. This man. Huh? Gangrene set in and it had to be amputated. But if they had given proper information to Sri Aurobindo, he would have done it. Now this needs a little explanation because someone will say, Sri Aurobindo has got power. Why can't he cure? Why does he need symptoms? So this needs a little explanation. Okay. I have a lot of power, okay? But I have to apply that power to a particular place, na? I have to apply it in a particular place. So you need symptoms. I have got power and I have to do a particular work. I have to apply my power to that particular work. It's not general power. So you need symptoms. In fact, this is also what happened once with mother. Okay? Mother fell ill once. Seriously ill. And doctors were saying all, the heart problem. And Sri Aurobindo was not able to do anything. So they called a doctor. I was speaking about you, the doctor, about the other day, walking, the same doctor. He was very well respected in the ashram. Okay? And his grandchildren were in the ashram. So this doctor was called, and when he came, Sri Aurobindo asked him to look at mother and give Sri Aurobindo the correct symptoms. Okay? Everybody was saying, oh, it's a heart problem. But he went and looked at her carefully. She was lying down. She was ill. And he said, it is not the heart at all. It is the problem of I think it was gout in the leg. Okay, it was a problem. That was the problem. It's there in Mother India, this article. So when Sri Aurobindo knew the symptom, he immediately cured her. So you need to know what the symptom is to be able to apply your power on that. Otherwise, how will you cure?
And you do have to concentrate that power.
Yes. Say, a doctor has to cure you. He has to use the right instrument for the right disease. So you need particularization. So that's why he needs symptoms. So in this case, he did not succeed because they were not giving him the right symptoms. So his leg had to be amputated. Then Sri Aurobindo said that you have not been supplying me, you have not followed my instructions. So I am not responsible anymore. But all other cases, he was able to cure. Okay, so that was a little aside. Okay, so one thing very clear, the Sankhya has necessarily to insist on the plurality of souls, which the Vedanta does not. Vedanta says this is all dream world, it is not real. And there also Vedanta has got different aspects. Sri Aurobindo also is a Vedantin, but he says it is true that the physical forms have no reality, essential reality. But behind the form there is a reality in the world. Don't dismiss the world. Dismiss the forms as unreal. That's his contention. So, this clarity between Sankhya and Vedanta and Gita is necessary because the Gita accepts some of the principles of Vedanta and Sankhya, but not all. So that's why he has gone into detail. Okay? This is all there in the chapter 3 and elsewhere also it is there. Chapter 2 rather. The Gita starts from this analysis and seems at first, even in its setting forth of yoga, to accept it almost wholly. It accepts Prakriti and her 3 gunas and the 24 principles, accepts the attribution of all action to the Prakriti and the passivity of the Purusha, accepts the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos, accepts the dissolution of the identifying ego sense, the discriminating action of the intelligent will, and the transcendence of the action of the three modes of energy as the means of liberation. The yoga which Arjuna is asked to practice from the outset is yoga by the buddhi, the intelligent will. But there is one deviation of capital importance. The Purusha is regarded as one, not many. For the free, immaterial, immobile, eternal, immutable self of the Gita. Okay? The Purusha is regarded as one, not many. For the free, immaterial, immobile, eternal, immutability of the self. But for one detail is a Vedantic description of the eternal, passive, immobile, immutable Purusha of the Sankhya's. So this one difference is there between Vedanta and the Sankhya. Plurality of souls and oneness of souls. But the capital importance, the capital difference is that there is one and not many. Okay. But the capital difference is that there is one and not many. This brings in the whole difficulty which the Sankhya multiplicity avoids and necessitates a quite different solution. This the Gita provides by bringing into its Vedantic Sankhya the ideas and principles of the Vedantic Yoga. So it brings in, this difference is there between Gita and the Sankhya. So it brings in the Vedantic idea of the yoga. Okay? Yoga is the Karma Yoga. When Gita speaks about the yoga, it is speaking of Karma Yoga. That's right. Okay? So this is the how the Gita corrects it. And the Gita also has another explanation. It goes into the three Purushas, the Kshara Purusha, the Akshara Purusha, and the Uttama Purusha. So these are the differences between Sankhya and the Gita. The first important new element we find is in the conception of the Purusha itself. So in the Sankhya, Purusha is only one. Multiple, but Purusha is essentially of one type. But in the Gita, Purusha goes on changing its status as it goes up. Okay? Prakriti conducts her activities for the pleasure of Purusha. But how is that pleasure determined? How is it determined? In the strict Sankhya analysis, it can only be by a passive consent of the silent witness. Okay? Passively, the witness consents to the action of the intelligent will and the ego sense. Passively, he consents to the recoil of that will from the ego sense. He is witness, source of the consent, by reflection, upholder of the work of nature. Sakshi, Anumanta, Bharta, but nothing more. But the Purusha of the Gita is also the Lord of nature. He is Ishvara. So it brings in the idea of Kshara Purusha, Akshara Purusha, Uttama Purusha. So that is the difference in, again, to correct the view. Okay, so but the Purusha of the Gita is also the Lord of nature. He is Ishvara. If the operation of the intelligent will belongs to nature, the origination and power of the will proceed from the conscious soul. He is the Lord of nature. So this is the difference between the concept of Purusha in Sankhya and in Gita. In Sankhya, the Purusha is inactive. When the Gita, the Purusha at a higher level is also sanction giver and active. He is Lord of nature. He is not only consenting to the actions of nature, but he is another level. That's the reason why Sankhya is okay at lower level. But if you go up, Sankhya is not valid anymore. Okay? So, if the operation of the intelligent will belongs to nature, the origination and power of the will proceed from the conscious soul. He is the Lord of nature. If the act of intelligence of the will is an act of Prakriti, the source and light of the intelligence are actively contributed by the Purusha. This is the Gita's explanation. He is not only the witness, but the Lord and knower, master of knowledge and will, Jnata, Ishvara. He is the supreme cause of the action of Prakriti, the supreme cause of its withdrawal from action. In the Sankhya analysis, Purusha and Prakriti in their dualism are the cause of the universe, of the cosmos. In the synthetic Sankhya, Purusha, by his Prakriti, is the cause of the cosmos. So, Purusha has power over Prakriti in the Gita, is the cause of the cosmos. We see at once how far we have traveled from the rigid purism of the traditional analysis of Sankhya. In the Gita, you have gone away quite far from the Sankhya philosophy. That's what it is.
Good.
We stop here.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste, you all.